the frost clinging to the paned glass of. The Midnight Crescent Tavern echoed the biting chill in Clara's chest as the antique grandfather clock struck a heavy, melancholic 2:27 a.m. She sat alone at the far edge of the mahogany bar, her fingers lightly tracing the ice cubes floating in her amber glass. To anyone passing by on the snow-dusted cobblestones of Blackwood Village, she looked like nothing more than a lonely wanderer nursing a late-night gin. They had no idea she was an exiled Omega, stripped of her birthright, her pack, and her identity. Nor did Clara realize that from the velvet-draped shadows of the tavern's upper mezzanine, a pair of piercing, molten gold eyes had been tracking the subtle pulse in her throat for the past 3 hours. The Alpha King, Ethan Vance, leaned against the dark carved railing above, hidden entirely from the sparse patrons below. Standing over 6'4" with shoulders built for armor and an aura that commanded submission without a word, Ethan was a figure of terrifying myth across the Northern Territories. Yet tonight, he was motionless, his hyper-attuned werewolf senses locked exclusively onto the fragile woman below. He listened to the steady, rhythmic beat of her heart, smelled the crisp, heartbreaking scent of winter jasmine and crushed pine that rolled off her skin, and felt a strange, undeniable pull that defied every instinct of his royal bloodline. For Clara, tonight was meant to be her final night of freedom before vanishing completely. 3 years ago, she had been cast out of the Silver Moon Pack after being falsely accused of treason by her own half-brother. Being an Omega meant she possessed no towering physical strength or aggressive aura to fight back. Her strength lay in her empathy, her rare healing lineage, and her uncanny ability to read the subtle emotional shifts of those around her. But empathy was useless against brutal ambition. Stripped of her rank and forced into hiding, she had survived in the human shadows, disguising her scent with bitter herbs and staying under the radar of royal enforcers. "Another one, sweetheart?" The old tavern owner, Samuel, asked softly as he wiped down the counter with a worn rag. His tired eyes held a flicker of paternal concern. He was a low-ranking beta who had given her a quiet job cleaning the tavern's back rooms in exchange for a warm place to sleep. "No, thank you, Samuel," Clara replied, her voice soft, carrying a melodic resonance that caused the unseen Alpha King upstairs to imperceptibly tighten his grip on the wooden railing. "This will be my last one. I need to catch the morning transport out of the valley before the mountain passes freeze over completely." "Leaving so soon?" Samuel sighed, setting the cloth down. "The roads aren't safe these days, Clara. Word from the capital says King Ethan's enforcers are sweeping the southern borders. They say he's searching for someone, a rogue or a fugitive. A man like him doesn't stop until he tears the territory apart." Clara swallowed hard, her hand trembling slightly as she lifted her glass to her lips. She knew about King Ethan. Every werewolf knew the stories of the uncompromising ruler who had united the fractured northern packs through sheer force and unyielding strategy. He was said to be ruthless, cold, and entirely devoid of mercy for those who broke the law. If his enforcers were sweeping the valley, it meant her time had run out. If they discovered an unregistered Omega, living disguised among betas and humans, she would be dragged back to the Alpha Council. Or worse, handed over to her half-brother to suffer whatever cruel fate he had planned. Up in the shadows, Ethan smelled the sudden spike of sharp copper fear in her scent, and an instinctual, protective growl rumbled deep within his chest, so low that only a creature of his rank could hear it. He didn't care about the laws of the council, nor was he searching for a political fugitive. He had traveled miles through a blinding blizzard to this godforsaken border town because of an ancient rumor. And now, looking down at Clara, the silver mark buried beneath her collarbone flared with a burning heat under his clothing. His wolf, dormant and silent for years amidst the heavy burdens of his crown, was suddenly thrashing against his ribs, roaring a single definitive truth. "Mate." Clara lowered her glass, unaware of the royal presence hovering above her, but her senses suddenly pricked. A strange, suffocating pressure filled the air, thick with the scent of dark cedar, ozone, and crushed snow. It wasn't the scent of an ordinary wolf. It was dominant, ancient, and overwhelmingly intoxicating. Her Omega instincts, suppressed for years, suddenly surged to the surface, causing her core to ache with a sudden, bewildering warmth. Her heart hammered against her ribs at 180 beats per minute. "Samuel?" Clara whispered, her eyes widening as she glanced around the dimly lit room. The few human patrons scattered at the tables were oblivious, but the air felt heavy, almost static. "Did someone else come in tonight?" "Just the usual crowd, child," Samuel said, frowning as he noticed her pale face. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I think I should go upstairs," Clara murmured, standing up quickly. But as she took a step toward the staircase leading to the employee quarters, the heavy oak front doors of the tavern were violently kicked open. A blast of freezing wind and howling snow swept into the tavern, extinguishing the flickering candles along the wall. 5 imposing figures strode through the doorway, clad in heavy leather and dark iron armor stamped with the crest of the Silver Moon Pack. The leader, a scarred beta with a cruel smile, scanned the room with predatory eyes until his gaze locked onto Clara. "Well, well," the scarred man sneered, stepping forward as the tavern patrons cowered in their seats. "Look what we found hiding in the trash. The lost Omega of Silver Moon. Your brother sends his regards, Clara." Clara backed away until her spine hit the edge of the bar, her breath hitching in her throat. "Marcus, how did you find me?" "You can't hide your scent forever, little bitch," Marcus growled, drawing a silver-tipped blade from his belt. "The Alpha Council ordered your return, dead or alive. And frankly, dead is much less paperwork." Clara's heart seized with terror. She had no weapon, no pack to protect her, and no strength to overpower 5 trained warriors. She squeezed her eyes shut, preparing for the inevitable strike, praying for a swift end. Then, the world seemed to freeze. A heavy, suffocating aura exploded throughout the tavern with the force of a physical impact. The glass windows shattered inward from the sheer pressure of wolfish power. The 5 Silver Moon enforcers gasped, instantly forced down onto their knees as the floorboards cracked under an unimaginable weight. Marcus dropped his blade, choking as the air was forcibly dragged from his lungs. Slowly, deliberately, heavy footsteps echoed from the top of the wooden staircase. Clara opened her eyes, her breath catching in her throat as a tall, imposing figure descended the stairs, emerging from the dark into the dim light of the tavern. His golden eyes burned with an terrifying, apocalyptic rage, and the raw, pure scent of cedar and thunder filled every inch of the space. "You dare draw a blade in my presence?" King Ethan Vance spoke, his voice a deep, reverberating rumble that shook the very foundations of the building. He didn't even look at the kneeling enforcers. His burning gaze was fixed entirely on Clara, pinning her to the spot with an intensity that made her soul tremble. And worse. "You dare threaten my queen?" Clara's mind reeled in absolute shock. Queen? She stared at the legendary Alpha King, unable to comprehend his words, while the enforcers whimpered in pure terror at his feet. But before she could even process the impossible title, Ethan moved with blinding speed, dropping to one knee before her, taking her small, trembling hand in his massive, warm palm, and pressing his lips to her knuckles. "I have looked for you for 3 years, Clara," Ethan whispered, his eyes softening into a warm, molten gold that sent a shiver straight down her spine. "And now that I have found you, no one will ever harm you again." Clara stood frozen, her eyes wide as she looked down at the most feared man in the realm kneeling at her feet, leaving her with one burning, terrified thought. How does the Alpha King know my name? The silence in the shattered tavern was deafening, broken only by the whimpers of the Silver Moon enforcers crushed beneath the sheer weight of Ethan's sovereign aura. Clara stared down at the formidable Alpha King kneeling before her, her mind racing to reconcile the terrifying legends of Ethan Vance with the fierce warmth radiating from his large hand wrapped around hers. Her Omega wolf, dormant for years under the suppressing influence of bitter herbs, stirred violently, humming in recognition of a bond so primal and deep it defied all logic. You know who I am?" Clara managed to whisper, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to pull her hand back, only for Ethan to tighten his grip with gentle firmness. "I know everything about you, Clara," Ethan replied, standing up to his full, towering height. The movement was fluid, graceful, and terrifying. He turned his gaze toward Marcus, the scarred beta who was struggling to breathe on the floor, his face flushed purple under the pressure of Ethan's dominant aura. "Including the fact that your half-brother, Julian, usurped your late father's title and staged a mock trial to frame you for treason." Clara gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "How could you possibly know that? The Silver Moon Pack sealed those records. Julian claimed I poisoned the former Alpha." "Julian lied," Ethan said coldly, snapping his fingers. From the shadowy doorway outside, 2 of Ethan's royal guards stepped into the room, clad in polished black steel. "Secure these trespassers, strip them of their ranks and place them in silver chains. They will answer to the royal court for attempting to execute an unverified sentence on sovereign land." "Your Majesty, please!" Marcus choked out, his eyes wide with frantic horror. "We were only following orders from Alpha Julian. We didn't know she was under your protection." "She is not merely under my protection," Ethan growled, his voice dropping into a resonant, bone-chilling tone that vibrated through the floorboards. "She is my fated mate. To touch her is to declare war on the entire Northern Kingdom." The royal guards dragged the screaming enforcers out into the freezing night, leaving the tavern in a heavy, stunned quiet. Samuel, the old beta owner, stood frozen behind the bar, his jaw slack, eyes darting between Clara and the ruler of the realm. Ethan turned back to Clara, the harsh edge in his expression melting away into an intense, searching gaze. "We need to leave," Ethan said softly, reaching out to gently drape his heavy, fur-lined cloak over Clara's small shoulders. The cloak was heavy, carrying his intoxicating scent of cedar, thunder, and crisp snow, instantly enveloping her in a wave of comforting warmth that made her knees go weak. "My carriage is waiting at the edge of the village. It is safe there." "Wait," Clara said, taking a step back, her defensive instincts flaring despite the intoxicating pull of the mate bond. "I don't even know you. You're the Alpha King, a man who executes rogues without trial. Why have you been watching me? Why now?" Ethan paused, a rare flicker of vulnerability passing through his dark, sharp features. "Because 3 years ago, on the night your father died, I received a prophecy from the High Priestess of the Royal Temple. She told me that the true heir to the Northern Balance was an exiled Omega, whose heart held the rare power of the Aura Weaver. But when I arrived at your territory to claim you, you were already gone, hunted into the shadows by Julian." Clara swallowed hard, her heart pounding against her ribs. In werewolf lore, an Aura Weaver was an extraordinarily rare genetic trait found once every few centuries among Omegas. Unlike standard Omegas who simply submitted to dominant Alphas, an Aura Weaver possessed the unique innate ability to harmonize, suppress, or amplify the aura of any werewolf around them, even an Alpha King. It was a power capable of calming an Alpha's deadly bloodlust, or completely neutralizing a rogue's aggression. "Julian didn't just exile me because he wanted the pack," Clara realized aloud, her eyes widening as the pieces of her past finally clicked into place. "He knew what I was. He wanted to kill me before my power awakened." "Precisely," Ethan said, taking a slow step toward her, his golden eyes glowing in the dim light. "Julian wanted to use your blood to craft a dark binding ritual, a forbidden technique that allows an alpha to forcibly absorb an omega's spiritual essence to double his own physical power. He didn't want you dead for treason. He wanted to harvest your lineage. The horror of the revelation hit Clara like a physical blow. She staggered slightly, but Ethan's arm caught her around the waist, pulling her flush against his chest. The contact sent a jolt of electricity straight through her core, her Omega Wolf letting out a soft, contented purr that made Clara's cheeks flush crimson. I have spent 3 years searching every village, every border town, and every hidden refuge in the continent, Ethan murmured, his breath brushing against her temple as he looked down at her. I sat in the dark of this tavern tonight watching you because I needed to be certain. I needed to see if you were ready to accept what you are, and who you belong with. Clara looked up into his eyes, torn between the terrifying responsibility of her true heritage and the overwhelming, undeniable attraction she felt toward this king. And if I'm not ready? If I don't want to be a queen? Ethan smiled faintly, a remarkably gentle gesture on a man built for war. Then I will build a fortress around you and wait until you are. But I will never let anyone hurt you again, Clara. That I swear on my blood. Before Clara could answer, a sharp whistle echoed from the mountain path outside, followed by the frantic beat of heavy drum beats echoing through the valley, the war signal of the Silver Moon Pack. Julian's forces were mobilizing, far sooner than expected. It seems your half-brother knows his enforcers failed, Ethan said, his tone darkening as he turned toward the door, his hand instinctively gripping the hilt of his broadsword. We leave now. As Ethan led Clara out into the snow toward the waiting armored carriage, Clara glanced back at the quiet tavern she was leaving behind. She had spent 3 years running from her shadow, believing she was a weak, nameless exile. But as Ethan held her hand with fierce protection, she realized her quiet life was over, and the dark secrets of her blood were about to drag the entire kingdom into war. The armored carriage hurtled through the winding, snow-blinded passes of the Frostfang Mountains, its heavy, iron-rimmed wheels crushing the ice beneath them. Inside, the cabin was plush and lined with dark velvet, but the atmosphere remained taut with unspoken tension. Clara sat across from Ethan, wrapped tightly in his heavy fur cloak. The steady heat emanating from his body warmed the carriage, yet her mind churned with a mixture of disbelief, anxiety, and a strange, budding trust toward the man who sat watching her every breath with fierce devotion. Julian will not let us reach the capital without a fight, Clara said softly, her hands folded tightly in her lap. He has built alliances with rogue factions along the southern ridge. He knows if I reach the royal court, his claim to the Silver Moon Pack will be completely invalidated. Let him come, Ethan replied, his deep voice calm, almost predatory. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, his molten gold eyes fixing on hers. The Silver Moon Pack is built on stolen authority. A house built on sand collapses the moment the tide rolls in. And I am the tide, Clara. Clara looked down, tracing the intricate embroidery of the royal crest on the cloak. You speak with such certainty, but you don't know what he did to me, Ethan. He didn't just exile me. He used a silver brand to suppress my core. My wolf has been suppressed for 3 years. I don't know if I can ever weave an aura again. Ethan moved from his seat, shifting to sit directly beside her on the bench. The velvet cushion dipped under his weight, and the intoxicating scent of dark cedar and ozone filled her senses, soothing the frantic edge of her anxiety. Gently, without pressing, he reached out and touched the side of her neck, his broad thumb stroking the sensitive skin right above her collarbone. The mark of a suppressive brand is painful, but it only seals the surface, Ethan murmured, his voice dropping into an intimate register that sent a shiver down her spine. An aura. Weaver's strength does not originate from her pack or her rank. It originates from her spirit. Your wolf is not dead, Clara. She is merely waiting for the right key to unlock her. And what is the key? she asked, her breath catching as his fingers lightly trailed down toward the hidden mark beneath her collar. Connection, Ethan whispered, his eyes burning with an intense, raw emotion. Trust, and the unyielding bond of your mate. Before Clara could process the heat surging through her chest, a sudden deafening impact rocked the carriage. The vehicle lurched violently to the left, throwing Clara against Ethan's chest. The screeching sound of iron tearing against wood echoed overhead, followed by the terrifying roars of corrupted, oversized wolves. The carriage slid across the icy road, coming to a dramatic jarring halt as one of the draft horses screamed in terror. "Stay inside," Ethan commanded, his warm demeanor instantly vanishing, replaced by the terrifying, lethal composure of the Alpha King. He drew 2 massive silver-bladed daggers from his belt and kicked open the carriage door, stepping out into the blinding blizzard. Clara pressed herself against the frosted glass window, her heart hammering wildly against her ribs. Outside, a dozen monstrous shadow wolves, warriors transformed using forbidden blood magic, surrounded the carriage, their eyes glowing an unnatural, sickly crimson. Among them stood a tall figure draped in dark wolfskin, his face twisted in a smug, cruel sneer. It was Julian, her half-brother. "Ethan Vance!" Julian shouted over the howling wind, his voice amplified by dark magic. "You step into Silver Moon territory to claim a traitor. Surrender the girl, and you may leave with your crown intact." "You dare address your king with such insolence, puppy?" Ethan growled, his body beginning to shift, his muscles expanding as his lethal alpha aura burst forth, crushing the snow beneath his boots. "She is no queen," Julian sneered, drawing a dark, twisted crystal from his cloak, the Sanguine Core, an ancient artifact used for harvesting Omega bloodlines. "She is nothing but a battery for my ascension. Attack!" The Shadow Wolves charged with terrifying speed. Ethan moved like a hurricane of steel and raw power, slicing through the corrupted beasts with brutal efficiency. But Julian did not aim for Ethan. He raised the Sanguine Core toward the carriage, chanting an ancient, forbidden incantation. Inside the carriage, the silver brand on Clara's chest suddenly flared with the excruciating, searing agony. She cried out, falling to her knees on the carriage floor as black, smoky tendrils of energy seeped through the wood, wrapping around her wrists and pulling her essence toward the crystal in Julian's hand. "He's draining me," Clara thought, her vision swimming in white-hot pain. "He's using the artifact to forcibly strip my lineage." Through the haze of agony, she saw Ethan being swarmed by 4 massive shadow wolves, fighting fiercely to tear his way back to her, his desperate roars shaking the mountainside. "Clara!" he roared, his voice laced with pure panic as he saw her weakening. "No," Clara thought, a sudden fierce spark of defiance igniting deep within her soul. "I will not be a victim again. I am not his pawn." Instead of fighting the dark magic pulling at her, Clara closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, past the pain, past the silver brand, straight into the quiet, glowing ember of her suppressed wolf. She stopped fighting the energy flow and instead opened her heart completely to the mate bond linking her to Ethan. She embraced Ethan's aura, his strength, his warmth, his unwavering promise to protect her. In that instant, the major plot twist of her bloodline unfolded. The Aura Weaver trait was not merely a passive buffer. When locked with a true fated Alpha King, it acted as a total sensory counter-frequency. A blinding celestial light burst from Clara's chest, shattering the carriage doors into splinters. A wave of shimmering, iridescent silver energy exploded outward in a massive sonic shockwave. The dark tendrils of the Sanguine Core instantly snapped, and the crimson glow in the Shadow Wolf's eyes was forcefully extinguished as Clara's raw, harmonizing aura cleansed the dark magic from their bodies, forcing them instantly back into their human forms, unconscious in the snow. Julian gasped, staggering backward as the Sanguine Core in his hand cracked and shattered into useless dust. "What?" What did you do?" he screamed in absolute horror. Clara stepped out of the ruined carriage, her hair floating gently in the winter wind, her eyes glowing with a brilliant, ancient silver light. Beside her, Ethan stared in absolute awe, feeling his own alpha strength surge tenfold under the harmonizing power of her awakened aura. Julian looked between the two of them, the unleashed Alpha King and the fully awakened Omega Queen, and realized with a sickening lurch in his stomach that he hadn't just ambushed an exile. He had ignited the wrath of the gods. The mountain pass was deathly silent, the howling wind suddenly quelled by the sheer magnitude of the silver light radiating from Clara. Julian stumbled back through the knee-deep snow, his face pale with utter terror as his dark magic withered away into nothingness. The sanguine core lay shattered at his feet, its corrupted essence neutralized by the absolute purity of the Aura Weaver's full awakening. "This is impossible," Julian stammered, his hand trembling as he reached for his sword. "You were just an Omega, a weak, useless girl." "I was an Omega who trusted the wrong brother," Clara said, her voice echoing with a celestial resonance that vibrated through the frosted air. She took a step forward, the snow beneath her boots glowing with soft silver light. "You stole my father's pack, branded me, and chased me into the dark. But you forgot one fundamental truth, Julian. Light does not bow to shadow." Ethan stepped up beside her, his massive frame radiating in terrifying absolute power that was now perfectly amplified by Clara's harmonizing aura. The golden glow in his eyes matched the silver brilliance in hers, a visual testament to the unbreakable bond of fated royalty. He didn't even need to draw his blade. The mere pressure of his enhanced royal aura forced Julian to his knees, his sword slipping from his numb fingers and plunging into the ice. "Julian of the Silver Moon," Ethan declared, his voice rolling through the valley like thunder. "For the crimes of high treason, forbidden blood magic, and attempted murder of the Sovereign Queen, your rule is ended. Your pack is stripped from your hands, and your life is forfeit to the royal court." "No, please!" Julian shrieked, clawing at the snow as royal guards, having finally caught up to the royal carriage, surrounded him, locking him in heavily enchanted silver shackles. "Clara, we are blood. Tell him to show mercy." Clara looked down at the man who had brought her 3 years of exile and fear. Her expression remained serene, devoid of hatred, but firm with absolute justice. "Mercy is for those who seek redemption, Julian. You sought only power. Take him away." As the guards dragged her sobbing half-brother into the heavy transport wagons, the remaining cleansed warriors of the Silver Moon Pack slowly woke from the snow. Freed from the dark influence of the sanguine core, they looked up at Clara with wide, tearful eyes, recognizing the true bloodline of their late Alpha. One by one, they bowed their heads, placing their hands over their hearts in solemn submission to their true queen. Ethan turned to Clara, his fierce, terrifying demeanor instantly dissolving into profound tenderness. He reached out, gently wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her close against his chest. The silver glow around Clara slowly subsided, settling into a deep, comforting warmth that filled her entire being. The suppressive brand beneath her collarbone was completely gone, healed by the pure energy of her awakened wolf. "Are you unharmed?" "My queen?" Ethan asked softly, his thumb gently wiping a stray flake of snow from her cheek. "I am complete, Ethan," Clara whispered, looking up into his golden eyes with a soft, radiant smile. "For the first time in 3 years, I am finally whole." Ethan smiled, leaning down to press his lips against hers in a deep, passionate kiss that sealed their bond forever. The Northern Kingdom had found its queen, not through conquest or fear, but through the undeniable power of love, destiny, and the true balance of an Alpha King and his fated Omega. 3 months later, the grand hall of the royal capital shone with thousands of burning candles and intricate floral arrangements of winter jasmine and mountain pine, Wolves from every corner of the realm gathered to celebrate the official coronation of Queen Clara and King Ethan. Draped in magnificent velvet robes of midnight blue and silver, Clara sat beside Ethan on the double thrones, her heart full as she looked out over a peaceful, united kingdom. The shy, fearful woman who had sat alone in a dark tavern at 2:27 a.m., drinking cold gin to numb her pain, was gone. In her place stood a formidable, loving sovereign who held the hearts of her people and the absolute devotion of the realm's most powerful king. Ethan reached across the armrest, lacing his long fingers through hers and giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "A penny for your thoughts, my love," he murmured, leaning close. Clara smiled, resting her head against his shoulder as the court cheered for their rulers. "I was just thinking about that night in the tavern," she whispered. "If I had left 5 minutes earlier, I would have missed you completely." Ethan chuckled, a rich, dark sound that thrilled her to her core. He kissed the side of her neck, right over the glowing, permanent mark of their mate bond. "You could have run to the ends of the earth, Clara. My wolf would have found you regardless. We were written in the stars long before we ever met." As the music flared and the grand court raised their goblets in a royal toast, Clara knew her days of running were over. She had found her home, her purpose, and her true king. Fate has a strange way of finding us in our darkest hours, turning our greatest moments of vulnerability into the foundation of our strength. Would you have the courage to step out of the shadows and claim your true destiny, even if it meant facing your worst nightmares? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more thrilling Alpha and Omega romance stories.